Jungkook's fingers fumbled with the house keys. They had so many for no reason at all. He was in a bit of a rush since he was late, 3 hours late to be precise. He promised Taehyung that he would be home at 5 for date night. Well, actually, that's not really how it went. Jungkook was desperate for a date night. They don't see each other enough, as Jungkook has previously mentioned several times. Taehyung agreed since Taehyung could get away from work whenever he wanted to. Everyone in his damned skyscraper worships the ground he walks on. Of course, they'd finish up any work he had left uncompleted. He had arrangements already made with his boss, Daniel, to be let off early just for the night. But of course, Daniel always gets his way, one way or another. So, Daniel invited some important business investors over for an impromptu meeting which, with some whiskey, lasted long enough for Jungkook to miss his date night. And the worst part is, Daniel had Jungkook working around like a waitress at a diner full of 1950s greasers. Of course, Jungkook had to abandon his job at the front desk to bring drinks to men twice his age. Jungkook did his best to keep a distance though, since some of them have quite the history, if you will. But Jungkook obliged. He didn't complain one bit. He can't afford to lose this job. Well, money-wise, of course but having this job keeps just a sliver of dignity for himself that he lives for. He will not succumb to the stay-at-home husband so Taehyung can go lollygag at his office and skip all the way home. No matter how much Taehyung wants him to quit, he refuses. No matter how much his boss acts like a creep and keeps asking him out, he won't quit. The gold key slid into the lock. He twisted it to the left, hearing it unlock. He sighed as he opened the front door. He could sense that Taehyung was mad. Jungkook dropped his coat on the floor, feeling just too exhausted to pick it up now. He'll do it tomorrow. His palms ached from carrying trays and glasses full of overpriced alcohol. I guess he was meant to serve the rich. He flung the fridge open in search of a snack. Dinner wouldn't do. The cool-toned light dully illuminated his features. You could see the exhaustion oozing from his pores. You're late, Jungkook sighed, pressing his forehead against the now closed refrigerator door. I'm aware. Where have you been? I called you over 20 times. I was on the clock, Taehyung. Where else? Taehyung chuckled somberly. With yours? The one who practically foams at the mouth every time he sees you? The one who loiters at your desk all day rather than at his own? The one who stares at your ass whenever you go fetch him another drink? Taehyung, I would never leave you for him. Jungkook fixed his gaze on Taehyung, taking in his appearance. He had his usual date night clothes on, the ones Jungkook liked best. Dark green that matched his eyes. His hair was disheveled as though it had been pulled. Taehyung's jaw and cheeks began to flush, something that occurred when he was mad. Discarded glasses of wine lay abandoned on their coffee table. I already feel terrible about it. You don't have to make me feel worse, Jungkook bit back. You were the one who wanted a date night and now you've ruined it. Taehyung threw his hands up in frustration and began to pace over to the living room. Why does it always have to be someone's fault? Jungkook followed Taehyung. This wasn't over. I knew it's not your fault, but it's definitely not mine. Tears started to pool in Jungkook's eyes even with how much they fought. They fight more often than not nowadays. Jungkook could feel their foundation beginning to crumble. But when it is my fault, I can admit that I'm wrong. Unlike you, Taehyung spat out. Jungkook choked on his words. Both of them had been quite mean to each other in the past, but right now Jungkook was vulnerable. Taehyung's words cut like daggers every time. He's sure his words are the same to him. Jungkook fixed his gaze on their beautiful hardwood floor, masked with a modern, patterned rug. I don't want to see you right now. Likewise, Jungkook. Jungkook sought out shelter in their bedroom afterward. It seemed like the only place you could find comfort at this time. They were both always too wounded to negotiate after their arguments. Sometimes Taehyung leaves entirely, and sometimes Jungkook does too. The shadows of their previously happy marriage taunted him on their walls. Pictures in frames from their wedding day or their vacation seemed shallow now. Neither of them could bear to stay in its presence. As they approached the club, Jungkook's fingers began to go numb. Can we just go home? Jungkook had always been a homebody. It'll be fun. You have to put yourself out there. It's either this or Tinder, Jungkook groaned. If it means I get to stay home, I'll take Tinder. You're not fun anymore. Was I ever? Jungkook sent Yoongi a knowing look. Yoongi didn't respond. Jungkook's nerves only worsened as they were escorted inside. Apparently, Yoongi was a VIP. Jungkook wouldn't put it past him. Jungkook felt like he was in the jungle. Almost literally. Dancers dressed as peacocks and locals of the forest fluttered around the room. Their faces were hidden by realistic masks depicting them as colorful birds. Most attendees were dressed in their most extravagant clothing. He couldn't tell if he was at a club or the capital. He's a casual fan of the Hunger Games. Familiar faces whisked past him, most with drunk girls attached to them. Jungkook would be disgusted if it wasn't typical. Layers of smoke blanketed over the pavilion, fogging his already damaged eyes. Through the fog, waves of vibrancy and saturation bloomed. His surroundings almost tricked his brain into thinking he wasn't sober. It was all something out of an acid trip. It was quite the graphic club. Jungkook might even say he felt overdressed. Not like he was too fancy or anything, but everyone was practically nude. Clothes were being torn off completely as though they didn't cost anything. He definitely saw a guy finish in his pants. Maybe he does have the soul of a nun after all. He's starting to get desensitized to it. It's just the New York lifestyle. But in the back of his mind, he wonders how the human race ended up like this. Let's get some shots, Yoongi shouted over the music and voices. Moans more like. Yoongi threw back another shot. Right, Mr. VIP. Jungkook tilted his glass full of liquor, swishing around the contents. He wasn't entirely sure what it was either. They were both more drunk than either of them would like to admit. Although he wasn't drunk like a college girl like he normally was, he was just loopy. His limbs moved freely like jello, and so did every thought in his brain. Jungkook's warm hand touched his shoulder authoritatively. You remember me, don't you? Jungkook's head turned towards the familiar voice. It was Daniel, his old boss. How lucky could he be? Even in his drunken state, Jungkook knows a fine man when he sees one. He had aged like fine wine. A shadowed scruff peppered his jaw, chin, and upper lip, bringing out his maturity. Daniel had transformed into a hot dilf. Jungkook was not complaining. Maybe he's done with baby-faced guys. How could I forget? He smiled warmly, so warm his cheeks began to burn. Jungkook could see Yoongi slip out of his seat and into the crowd once more while Daniel happily took the open chair. I can't put into words how proud I am of you. Your book is just incredible. He slapped a $20 down on the bar. Is it incredible, or are you just glad I'm not with Taehyung anymore? Jungkook had forgotten how blunt he is when he's drunk. Daniel laughed at the honesty. You haven't changed one bit, Jungkook hummed. You have a little. All good changes, I hope. The bartender placed a cocktail on the bar before quickly whisking away to other needy customers. Well, you got hotter. Jungkook picked at his nails to try and distract his conscience from the words spewing from his lips. I didn't know that was possible. Jungkook couldn't help but laugh. Everything was funny at this hour. We should get dinner sometime. Just jumping straight to the point there. Anja, is that a yes or a no? Jungkook tried to hide a dopey smile. At least now Yoongi can get off his ass about not having a date yet. He's going out with a DILF. Isn't that everyone's dream? Maybe. Jungkook smiled coyly. Call me. Daniel's hand rested upon Jungkook for a second before he too disappeared into the crowd, leaving Jungkook all alone. Jungkook was very giddy that he had a date. And it all went according to plan. Jungkook was aiming for Daniel anyway and he hit a bullseye. Jungkook just gazed happily into the bottom of his glass, waiting for Yoongi to collapse on his shoulder, begging Jungkook to take him home. Who knew putting yourself out there was so freeing? Or maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was being surrounded by about people. The crowd roared from behind him. He abandoned his drink at the bar and enjoyed some fun and alcohol. Reaching the front, however, Jungkook was shocked. Body shots had not been the main attraction. His eyes located the eye of the storm only to find two people at the center of it all, stirring the pot. Taehyung with a new girl. But not just any girl, no, it was Jennie. That's right, the supermodel. The world's highest paid model. With those stats, you don't even have to look at her to know she's gorgeous. There she was, perched on top of Taehyung's lap like she was a Barbie made out of weightless plastic. Even in a plain, little black dress, she was still shining in the center of the room, surrounded by celebrities alike. They both smiled and entertained their kisses on cheeks, her hands sliding into his open shirt, her laughing as though he was the funniest man in the world. And Taehyung, oh, Taehyung. Jungkook's heart throbbed. Taehyung's smile was so real, so genuine. A smile one could only experience once in 20 lifetimes. It was more rare than it passing through. And it hurt. It filled his mind with terrible, rotten thoughts. He wanted to throw this lap. He had imagined Taehyung with other men, and other girls, but he honestly never believed that it would actually happen. But here we are. Jungkook exchanged his time in the pit of horrors to go cry in the bathroom if there ever was one around. He knew it was pathetic. Hell, he just got a date at the bar 2 minutes earlier. But Jungkook knows he's not in love with Daniel. Taehyung looked like he was in love with a heartless Jennie. Who cares anyway? Very unpolitely, if you can believe it, Jungkook his way out of that damn box. He knew going out was a terrible idea. Now he's just going to sit in his house and eat Jungkook while thinking about the girl Taehyung loves. The girl he loves. That looks rough, a stranger grimaced. Thanks. Jungkook wiped the excess off of the corners of his mouth. He puked on the side of someone's car. He hopes it's Kendall's, but she probably doesn't drive a grey Honda Civic. You would think he would be a lot more stressed out about the fact that a stranger's car is now covered in whatever was cooking up in his insides, but that happens to be the least of his problems. Jungkook could do nothing but stare at the damage. His drunken brain couldn't thought of a solution. All he could think about was jealousy. He ripped his wallet out of his pocket and stuffed whatever cash he had in between the window and the wipers. He should probably go home. He would honestly kill for a smoke right now, but he couldn't fit a pack in his pocket. So instead he pulled out his phone to call his driver. Hopefully, The traffic won't hold them up for too long or he might lose it. Broken phone. Jungkook hesitated, trying to see if he could ignore the voice that brought him so much pain. He couldn't generate some kind of cheeky response. All he could do was try to resist. But he's only a man. He couldn't help himself. Yeah, Jungkook's words came out jumbled and dusty like an antique toy's voice box. You always let your anger get the best of you. Taehyung shook his head with a fond smile. Excuse me. Taehyung still knew him inside and out, something he really wished Taehyung would just forget. He wishes they could be strangers again, for his own mental sake. It's not in a negative way. Taehyung kept his gaze on the hustle and bustle surrounding them. Well, it sure as hell sounded like it. As if on cue, his driver pulled up to the curb. Jungkook, for some odd reason, expected Taehyung to open the door for him like their old routine, but he stayed stoic while Jungkook left him in the night. History repeats itself in funny ways but never in the way you wish it could. Wishes won't get you anywhere.